When Sarah Miller heard gunshots echoing across the dry Texas plains, she never imagined it would lead to harboring a wounded Comanche warrior beneath her home. But what she did next not only defied her neighbors, it changed everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The scorching Texas sun beat down on Sarah Miller's homestead, her modest cabin sitting isolated on the frontier's edge. At 32, the widow had spent 3 years alone since her husband's passing, managing their small farm with quiet determination. The summer of 1872 had been particularly harsh, the drought turning the once green landscape into a dusty wasteland. Sarah wiped sweat from her brow as she hauled water from the well to her vegetable patch. The distant sound of gunshots made her freeze. Gunfire wasn't unusual in these parts, but something about the rapid succession of shots and following war cries sent a chill down her spine. "Trouble," she muttered, abandoning her bucket and hurrying toward the house. From her porch, she could see dust clouds rising over the hill that separated her property from the Comanche settlement. Governor Edmund Davis had negotiated a fragile peace with the tribe last year, but tensions remained high. Settlers continually encroached on native lands, and not everyone respected the tenuous agreements. Sarah grabbed her father's old spyglass, straining to see through the haze. Figures on horseback circled something or someone on the ground. More shots rang out. "Damn fools," she hissed. The peace would never hold if vigilante settlers kept provoking conflicts. She should stay out of it. That's what the townsfolk would advise. But Sarah had never been one to heed conventional wisdom. Her late husband used to say her conscience would be the death of her someday. Resolved, she hurried inside, exchanging her apron for a sturdy coat despite the heat. She grabbed her husband's old rifle, checked it was loaded, and headed for the barn. Her mare Penny nickered as Sarah approached. "Easy, girl. We're going for a ride." As she rode toward the commotion, Sarah's thoughts drifted to her first encounter with the Comanche people 3 years ago. After James died, 3 warriors had appeared at her homestead. She'd been terrified, but instead of violence, they offered her game in exchange for medicine for one of their sick children. Since then, an unspoken understanding existed between her and the tribe. Cresting the hill, the scene below made her blood run cold. 5 settlers surrounded a wounded Comanche warrior who was desperately trying to crawl toward cover. His leg was clearly injured, blood soaking through his buckskin leggings. Sarah recognized the leader of the settlers, Henry Walsh, a man known for his hatred of the native tribes. He'd lost his brother in a raid years back and had never forgotten. "Let's finish this savage and head back to their camp," Walsh shouted. "Teach 'em all a lesson." Sarah didn't hesitate. She fired her rifle into the air, startling both the men and their horses. "That's enough," she shouted, guiding Penny down the slope. Walsh turned, his face contorting with anger when he recognized her. "Mrs. Miller, this ain't your business. This Comanche and his friends attacked Thompson's cattle." "I don't see any friends, Mr. Walsh. Just one injured man against 5 armed settlers," Sarah replied, positioning herself between them and the wounded warrior. "Man, he's a savage," spat one of Walsh's companions. "They understand nothing but force." The wounded Comanche warrior looked up at Sarah, his dark eyes filled with pain but unwavering pride. He said something in his native tongue, then switched to broken English. "No attack cattle. Protect children from men who burn tipis." Walsh raised his rifle. "Get out of the way, Sarah. Your husband ain't here to protect you anymore. And yours won't be either, Mary Walsh, if Henry here doesn't lower that gun." Sarah replied coldly, aiming her rifle squarely at Walsh's chest. "The governor signed a peace treaty. This isn't justice, it's murder." A tense standoff ensued, the only sounds being the wounded warrior's labored breathing and the nervous shuffling of horses. Finally, Walsh lowered his weapon. "You're making a mistake, Sarah. These savages can't be trusted. Go home, all of you," Sarah commanded. "And if I hear about any raids on the Comanche settlement, I'll ride straight to Fort Richardson myself." Grumbling threats, Walsh and his men eventually turned their horses around. Before riding off, Walsh called back, "They'll kill you one day for your foolishness, woman." Once they disappeared over the ridge, Sarah dismounted, approaching the wounded warrior cautiously. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps in his mid-20s, with strong features and long black hair tied back with a leather strip. "My name is Sarah," she said, kneeling beside him. "Can you understand me?" "I am Tob," he replied, grimacing in pain. "Why you help?" "Because it was the right thing to do," she answered simply, examining his wound. The bullet had torn through his thigh, but thankfully hadn't hit any major vessels. "I need to get you somewhere safe. They might come back." As she helped Tabe onto her horse, Sarah knew she was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But something told her that this encounter would change both their lives forever. The journey back to Sarah's homestead was arduous. Tabe's blood seeped through the makeshift bandage she had fashioned from her petticoat, and his breathing grew increasingly labored. Every jolt of the horse drew a suppressed groan from his lips, though he tried to hide his pain. "Not much farther," Sarah reassured him, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the plains in amber hues. She knew Walsh and his men might return with reinforcements once their anger and wounded pride took hold. Tab's single quotes voice came weak but resolute. "Why woman alone? No husband? No family?" Sarah kept her eyes on the path ahead. "My husband died 3 winters ago. Fever took him. No children blessed our union. My people say alone is not good way to live." "And what about you? Don't you have family waiting?" Tab was silent for a moment. "I am warrior, protect village. My father is chief. Mother died when I was young." As they approached her property, Sarah made a decision. The cellar beneath her cabin, originally dug to store preserves through the harsh Texas summers, would serve as a hiding place. Few knew of its existence, and its entrance from outside the house was concealed by a stand of scrub brush. "I can't take you inside the house," she explained as they reached her land. "If Walsh returns with others, they'll search there first." She helped Tav dismount near the hidden cellar entrance, supporting his weight as he hobbled alongside her. The warrior was taller than she had realized, his frame lean but powerful. Despite his injury, he moved with dignified determination. The cellar was cool and dark, smelling of earth and the vegetables stored within. Sarah had lined part of it with straw years ago, creating a makeshift bed for the rare occasions when she needed to escape the sweltering heat upstairs. "Rest here," she instructed, helping him lie down. "I need to tend to Penny and bring supplies." Tab caught her wrist before she could leave. "They will punish you, your people." His words weren't a question but a statement of fact. "Perhaps," Sarah acknowledged. "But I answer to my conscience first." After settling her horse in the barn, Sarah gathered medical supplies from the house. Her father had been a doctor before moving west, and she had inherited both his books and his penchant for healing. She brought water, clean cloths, a bottle of whiskey, needle and thread, and some of her precious store of herbs. When she returned to the cellar, Tab was sitting upright, his back against the earthen wall. He had removed the blood-soaked bandage and was examining his wound with clinical detachment. "The bullet passed through," he noted. "Good fortune." "Good fortune would have been avoiding the bullet entirely," Sarah replied dryly, kneeling beside him. "This will hurt." She poured whiskey over the wound, and to his credit, Tab barely flinched. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white, but no sound escaped his lips. As Sarah worked, cleaning and then stitching the wound, an unexpected bond formed in their shared silence. She found herself telling him about her life, how she had come west with her husband chasing dreams of land and prosperity, only to find hardship and eventually widowhood. "Yet you stay," Tab observed as she finished bandaging his leg. "This land gets in your blood," Sarah admitted. "For better or worse, it's home now." Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Sarah quickly extinguished the lamp she had brought down. "Stay silent," she whispered, climbing the ladder to peer through the small ventilation gaps in the cellar doors. Riders approached her cabin. Walsh had returned with more men. Heart pounding, Sarah closed the cellar doors and descended back to Tabby. "They're here," she whispered. 7 of them. Above them, they could hear boots on her porch, then the crash of her door being kicked open. "Search the place." Walsh's voice carried faintly through the ground. "The savage can't have gotten far with that wound." Tabby's hand found hers in the darkness, a gesture that surprised her. "If they find me, you say I forced you, threatened you." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I don't lie, Tabby, not even to save myself." They remained in tense silence as footsteps moved above them, furniture being overturned and cupboards opened. Sarah prayed they wouldn't think to look for the cellar entrance. After what seemed like an eternity, Walsh's frustrated voice rang out. "Nothing here. Check the barn again, and then we'll head toward the creek." He must have crawled that way. Eventually, the sounds of the search party faded. Sarah waited a full hour before daring to climb up and peek out. The riders were gone, though her cabin door hung open, the interior ransacked. When she returned to Tabby, he had drifted into a fitful sleep, his face flushed with the beginning of fever. Sarah placed a cool cloth on his forehead and settled beside him for what would be a long night. As darkness enveloped them completely, Sarah contemplated the strange turn her life had taken. She had always kept to herself, avoiding the politics that divided settlers and natives. Now she had chosen a side, perhaps irrevocably. Tabby stirred in his sleep, murmuring words in his native tongue. Without thinking, Sarah began to hum a lullaby her mother had once sung to her, a gentle melody that seemed to soothe him. In that moment, beneath the earth and hidden from those who would do them harm, Sarah realized that some connections transcended the arbitrary boundaries humans drew between themselves. Dawn broke with an uneasy stillness. Sarah had dozed intermittently through the night, waking often to check on Tabby's condition. The fever had worsened, his skin alternating between burning hot and shivering cold. When the first light filtered through the cellar's small ventilation slats, she could see the wound had become inflamed despite her careful cleaning. "Water," he rasped, his lips parched and cracked. Sarah held a cup to his lips, the infection's taking hold. "I need to make a poultice with yarrow and echinacea. My people use." He struggled to find the English words. "Yellow flower, bitter taste." "Golden seal?" Sarah asked. "I have some dried in the house." Tab nodded weakly. "Mix with ... He touched his wound, then made a gesture like smoke rising. "A smoking ceremony? I don't understand." He shook his head in frustration. "No, ash mixed with ash." Sarah nodded in understanding. "Wood ash in the poultice. My grandmother used that method too." She needed to return to the house for supplies, but first, she had to ensure it was safe. Cautiously, she emerged from the cellar, scanning the horizon for any sign of Walsh and his men. The homestead appeared deserted, though her cabin remained in disarray from their search. Inside, Sarah quickly gathered what she needed: dried herbs from her stores, clean bandages, food, and water. As she moved through the ransacked rooms, straightening what she could, a flicker of movement outside the window caught her attention. A lone rider approached from the east, not from the direction of town, but from the Comanche settlement. Sarah's heart raced. Had Tabby's people come looking for him? She hurried back to the cellar, descending the ladder with her supplies. "Someone's coming. A rider from your settlement." Tabby struggled to sit up. "Who?" "I couldn't tell. Just one person. Though." He closed his eyes, concentrating through the pain. "My sister, maybe, Kimi." Sarah prepared the poultice as they waited, mixing the dried herbs with wood ash and a small amount of water to form a paste. She removed the old bandage, cleaned the wound again, and applied the mixture, covering it with fresh cloths. Above them, they heard the sound of a horse approaching, then stopping. Footsteps circled the cabin, followed by a woman's voice calling out in the Comanche language. "It is Kimi," Tab confirmed, relief evident in his voice. Sarah hesitated. "Can she be trusted not to bring others?" My sister keeps her word. Like you." With a nod, Sarah climbed up and carefully opened the cellar doors. A young woman stood several paces away, her hand on a knife at her belt. She couldn't have been more than 20, with the same proud bearing as Tabby. "I know you have my brother," she said in surprisingly good English. "The earth around your home shows signs of a wounded man." Sarah stepped fully out of the cellar. "He's here. Wounded but alive. Walsh and his men are hunting him." Kimi's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why would you help him?" "Because what they did was wrong," Sarah replied simply. "He's running a fever. I've made a poultice, but he may need medicine from your people." After a moment of scrutiny, Kimi relaxed her stance slightly. "Show me." Sarah led her down into the cellar. The reunion between brother and sister was brief but intense, a touch of foreheads, whispered words in their native tongue, and an exchange that seemed to hold volumes of meaning. I examined the wound and nodded approvingly at Sarah's treatment. "This is good medicine. Our healer uses similar ways." "Can you take him back to your people?" Sarah asked. I shook her head. "Not yet. Walsh and his men patrol the paths between here and our village. They hunt like wolves. Then he stays here until it's safe," Sarah decided. The three of them settled into an uneasy alliance. Kimi shared news that confirmed Sarah's fears. Walsh had rallied more settlers with tales of Comanche raids on cattle, inflaming tensions throughout the region. The army at Fort Richardson was sending patrols, ostensibly to keep peace, but their sympathies typically lay with the settlers. As morning stretched into afternoon, Tabby's fever began to break. The poultice was working, drawing out the infection. He ate a little of the stew Sarah had prepared and managed to hold a longer conversation. "Why did Walsh attack you?" Sarah asked as they shared the simple meal. Tabby exchanged glances with his sister before answering. "They want our land. The creek that runs through our territory, Gold, was found upstream." "Gold?" Sarah was genuinely surprised. "There's been no word of a strike." "Because they keep it secret," Kimi interjected bitterly. "They find small amounts, enough to make them greedy. They think more lies beneath our sacred grounds." Tab continued. "I was returning from hunting when I saw them burning an outlying tipi. No one was inside, but it was a message. I confronted them. They shot me when I turned to leave." The injustice of it burned in Sarah's chest. "That should be reported to the authorities." "The authorities?" Kimi's laugh was sharp and without humor. "They are the authorities. The Indian agent, the mayor, they all want what lies beneath our feet." Sarah couldn't deny the truth in her words. Even the supposedly fair-minded Governor Davis was known to bend to political pressure when it suited him. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats, multiple riders approaching fast. Kimi was on her feet instantly, peering through the ventilation slats. "Soldiers," she hissed. "Blue coats." Sarah's mind raced. "They must be looking for Tabby, or maybe they're responding to Walsh's complaints about me." "We cannot be found here," Tab stated grimly, "for your sake as much as ours." "There's a tunnel," Sarah said suddenly, remembering something she hadn't thought about in years. "My husband dug it as an escape route during the war. It leads to the creek bed, hidden by brush." She moved to the far corner of the cellar, pushing aside barrels to reveal a narrow opening. "It's rough going, but wide enough to crawl through." Kimi helped Tab to his feet. "You must come with us," she urged Sarah. "When they find you helped my brother, they will not show mercy." Sarah hesitated. This was her home, everything she had worked for. Yet she knew Kimi was right. The climate of fear and hatred that Walsh had stirred up would make her a target. "I need to get some things from the house," she decided. "Supplies, my husband's journal, some keepsakes." "There's no time," Kimi insisted, as the hoofbeats grew louder, but Sarah was already climbing the ladder. "I'll meet you at the creek bend, where the 3 large boulders sit." "Go now." Before they could protest further, she was above ground, closing the cellar doors and covering them with brush once more. She walked calmly toward her cabin, heart pounding but steps measured. 4 soldiers rode into her yard just as she reached her porch. Their leader, a lieutenant with a weathered face, dismounted. "Mrs. Miller? I'm Lieutenant Hayes. We're looking for a wounded Comanche warrior. Henry Walsh claims you interfered with their pursuit of him yesterday." Sarah straightened her spine, channeling every ounce of the proper doctor's daughter she had once been. "Mr. Walsh and his friends were attempting to murder an injured man. I suggested they let the proper authorities handle any grievances against the Comanche." "And where is this warrior now?" Hayes asked, his eyes scanning the property. "I have no idea. After Mr. Walsh left, I returned home alone." The lieutenant studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "You mind if we look around your property, ma'am? Just to be thorough." "Not at all," Sarah replied, praying that Tabe and Kimi had made good progress through the tunnel. "Though I'd appreciate if your men would be more respectful of my belongings than Mr. Walsh's group was." While the soldiers searched, Sarah casually gathered a few essential items, slipping them into a satchel: her father's medical book, James's journal, a small pouch of coins, and a miniature portrait of her parents. She also took ammunition for her rifle and some dried food, as if preparing for a normal day's work. Lieutenant Hayes returned from inspecting the barn. "No sign of him, though there's blood on your mare's saddle." "I found an injured calf yesterday," Sarah lied smoothly. "Brought it back to tend to it, but it didn't survive the night. I buried it behind the barn this morning." Hayes didn't look entirely convinced, but he had no evidence to contradict her. "Mrs. Miller, these are dangerous times. A woman alone should be more careful about getting involved in matters between settlers and Indians." "I'm simply trying to be a good Christian, Lieutenant," she replied. "Do unto others and all that." As the soldiers prepared to leave, Hayes lingered. "Walsh is gathering men, says he's going to teach the Comanche a lesson. Army can't officially stop civilians from protecting their property." The warning in his words was clear. "I understand," Sarah replied. "Thank you for your concern." Once the soldiers disappeared over the ridge, Sarah moved quickly. She saddled Penny, secured her supplies, and took one last look at the cabin that had been her home for the past 7 years. Then she rode toward the creek bend, toward an uncertain future with two people who, just yesterday, had been strangers. But sometimes, she reflected, the truest allies come from the most unexpected places. The creek bend with its 3 distinctive boulders was deserted when Sarah arrived. She dismounted, leading Penny to water while scanning the dense brush for any sign of Tabe and Kimi. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the landscape, providing ample hiding places along the creek bed. "Tab?" she called softly, wary of being overheard. "Kimi?" A slight rustling from a thicket of cottonwoods drew her attention. Kimi emerged, her movements as silent as a deer's. She beckoned Sarah to follow. "My brother grows weak again," she whispered. "The tunnel journey was difficult for him." Sarah followed Kimi through a nearly invisible path that wound between boulders and down to a small hollow beside the creek. There, partially concealed by overhanging branches, Tabi lay on a bed of gathered grasses. His face was ashen, the bandage on his leg spotted with fresh blood. "The wound reopened," Sarah observed, kneeling beside him. She quickly unpacked her medical supplies. "We need to stop the bleeding and get him somewhere safer for the night." As she worked to rebandage Tabe's leg, Sarah shared what she had learned from Lieutenant Hayes. "Walsh is gathering more men. They're planning something against your village." Tabe's eyes, though clouded with pain, sharpened with concern. "How many days since I left?" 2, Kimi answered. "The council waits for your return before deciding whether to move the camp." "We must warn them," Tab insisted, trying to sit up. Sarah gently but firmly pushed him back down. "You won't make it in your condition. The bleeding started again, and your fever could return." "I'll go," Kimi decided. "I can travel faster alone, reach the village by nightfall." Tab grabbed his sister's wrist. "Too dangerous. Walsh's men patrol the borders." A tense silence fell as they considered their limited options. Sarah was the first to speak. "I'll go with Kimi," she said. A white woman and a native woman traveling together might attract less suspicion than either alone. Both siblings stared at her in surprise. "You've already risked enough for us," Tob said softly. Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I've crossed a line I can't uncross, Tob. My home isn't safe anymore. And I won't stand by while innocent people are harmed." After a moment's consideration, Tob nodded. "There is wisdom in your plan. But where will I?" "There's an abandoned trapper's cabin about a mile upstream," Sarah interrupted. "James and I found it years ago. It's well hidden and should be safe enough for a night or two." With their course decided, they waited until dusk before moving. Sarah and Keeney helped Tob onto Penny, then guided the horse carefully along the creek bed to minimize tracks. The trapper's cabin was little more than a crude shelter, a single room with a deteriorating roof, but its location, nestled against a rocky outcropping and surrounded by dense undergrowth, made it nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. "We'll return as soon as possible," Sarah promised as they settled Tob inside with water, food, and her rifle. 2 days at most. "Be careful," he replied, his dark eyes holding hers for a long moment. "Walsh is a man consumed by hatred. He will not hesitate to kill." Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of their undertaking. As she and Keeney prepared to leave, Toby spoke again, this time in his native language. Keeney responded, then translated. "For Sarah, he says you have the heart of a Comanche warrior. Brave and true." The words warmed Sarah unexpectedly. "Tell him to save his strength. He'll need it when we return." Under the cover of darkness, Sarah and Keeney set out on foot toward the Comanche settlement. Keeney led, her knowledge of the landscape allowing them to travel swiftly while avoiding the main trails. They moved in companionable silence for nearly an hour before Keeney spoke. "Why did you really help my brother?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "When my husband died, I was alone in a hostile land. Your people could have killed me or driven me away, but instead, they showed kindness, offered fair trade, respected boundaries." She paused. "I suppose I wanted to return that respect." Keeney nodded thoughtfully. "Our father taught us that a person's character is revealed not by their words or the color of their skin, but by the choices they make when faced with difficult paths. Your father sounds wise." "He is, though even he struggles to understand the white man's endless hunger for land and gold." As they continued their journey, Sarah learned more about the Comanche way of life through Keeney's stories, their seasonal migrations following the buffalo, their horse culture, their complex social structures. In turn, Sarah shared tales of her life before coming west, her childhood in Boston, her father's medical practice, her courtship with James. Near midnight, they paused to rest in a small grove. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Texas sky. In the distance, they could see the faint glow of campfires. Walsh's men, positioned closer to the Comanche settlement than Sarah had feared. "We need to circle wide around them," Keeney whispered. "It will add hours to our journey." "Then we'd better keep moving," Sarah replied. Rising to her feet, dawn was breaking when they finally reached the outskirts of the Comanche camp. Sarah had expected hesitation or hostility from the sentries, but word of her intervention on Tebey's behalf had already spread through the tribe. They were escorted immediately to the chief's tipi. Chief Quanah, Tob and Keeney's father, was a formidable presence, tall and broad-shouldered, with penetrating eyes that seemed to look straight through Sarah. He listened intently as Keeney explained the situation in their native language, occasionally glancing at Sarah with an unreadable expression. When Keeney finished, the chief addressed Sarah directly in perfect English. "My son lives because of your courage. For this you have my gratitude." "He needs proper healing," Sarah replied. "And your people need warning. Walsh has gathered at least 20 men. They're camped less than 5 miles from here." Quanah nodded. Gravely, "We have seen them. Their numbers grow each day." He turned to an elder standing nearby. "Prepare the people to move. We leave for the winter grounds before sunset." "The soldiers at Fort Richardson," Sarah suggested. Lieutenant Hayes seemed fair-minded. If you appealed directly to him, words on paper mean nothing when gold speaks louder, Quanah interrupted. We have tried the white man's way of treaties and talks. Now we must protect our people our way. Sarah couldn't argue with his logic. She had seen firsthand how justice bent toward those with power and wealth. What about Tabai? She asked. He can't travel far in his condition. A small party will retrieve him, Quanah decided. You will guide them, white woman. Sarah, she corrected gently. My name is Sarah Miller. Something like respect flickered in the chief's eyes. Sarah Miller. You have chosen a difficult path. By helping my son. Sometimes the right path is the difficult one. The chief studied her for a long moment before speaking again. There is a place for you among us, if you wish it. Not all white faces bring destruction. The offer stunned Sarah. She had expected gratitude perhaps, but not acceptance. Before she could respond, commotion erupted outside the tipi. A young warrior burst in, speaking rapidly in Comanche. Quanah's expression hardened. Walsh and his men approached from the east. They bring fire. The camp transformed instantly from quiet morning routines to organized chaos. Women gathered children and essential supplies. Warriors mounted horses, and elders directed the evacuation with calm efficiency. Sarah found herself helping load travois with medicinal supplies, working alongside the tribe's healer, an elderly woman who moved with surprising speed. When a small rescue party prepared to retrieve Tabe, Sarah insisted on accompanying them. I know where he is, she argued, and I can tend his wounds during the journey. Quanah reluctantly agreed, providing her with a fresh horse. As they prepared to depart, the first shots rang out from the eastern perimeter of the camp. Go, Quanah commanded. Bring my son safely to the winter grounds. We will hold Walsh here long enough for the people to escape. The small party, Sarah and 3 warriors, rode out through the western edge of the camp, circling north to avoid detection. As they crested a hill, Sarah looked back to see smoke rising from several tipis. Her heart ached at the destruction, but there was no time for regret. Tav needed them. They reached the trapper's cabin by mid-morning. To Sarah's relief, Tav was alert and his fever had not returned. The strongest of the warriors helped him onto a horse, securing him with leather straps. My father, my sister? Tav asked anxiously. Leading our people to safety, one warrior assured him. Walsh attacked at dawn. Tave's face darkened with anger and concern. We must hurry. The winter grounds are 3 days' ride. Their journey was arduous but uneventful. They traveled by night and hid during daylight hours, taking a circuitous route to avoid both settlers and army patrols. Sarah remained constantly at Tabe's side, changing his bandages and preparing herbal remedies to fight infection. On the 3rd night, as they neared the winter grounds, Tabe and Sarah found themselves momentarily alone while the warriors scouted. Ahead, under a canopy of stars, he finally asked the question that had hung between them since that first day. What will you do now, Sarah Miller? Your life among your people is gone. Sarah gazed up at the vast sky, contemplating a future she had never imagined. I'm not certain. I can't go back. Walsh would make sure I face charges for helping you. Come with us, Tabe said simply. My father offered you a place. And what place would that be? Sarah asked, meeting his gaze. A curiosity? The white woman who lives with the Comanche? A healer, Tav replied. A teacher. A bridge between worlds. He paused, his voice softening. A friend. The word held possibilities that Sarah wasn't ready to examine too closely. Yet she couldn't deny the connection that had formed between them, forged in danger and strengthened by mutual respect. I would need to learn your ways, she said finally. Your language, your customs. Tave's smile was genuine, transforming his serious face. And I would learn more of yours. An exchange, equal and fair. By dawn, they reached the winter grounds, a hidden valley nestled between protective bluffs, with a clear stream running through its center. The Comanche had already established camp, tipis arranged in traditional circles. Sarah saw children playing, women working hides, men tending horses, life continuing despite the threat that had forced them from their summer lands. Kimi rushed to meet them, embracing her brother carefully before turning to Sarah. "You brought him safely, again." "We brought each other," Sarah corrected, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion. Chief Kwana welcomed them with dignity, ordering a tipi prepared for Sarah near the healer's lodge. As she was led away to rest, Sarah caught Tabe's eye. One last time. No words were necessary. They had both chosen paths that defied the boundaries others had established. In the days that followed, as autumn painted the Texas landscape in gold and crimson, Sarah began to learn the Comanche language and ways. She shared her medical knowledge with the tribe's healer and taught the children English words. Tave's wound healed cleanly, and he resumed his duties as a warrior, though he found time each day to visit Sarah. News eventually reached them that Walsh had been arrested by the army for inciting violence against the Comanche in violation of the governor's treaty. It was small justice, but it meant the tribe could return to their traditional lands come spring. Whether Sarah would return with them remained unspoken, a decision for another day. For now, she had found an unexpected home among people who judged her by her actions rather than her origins. And in Tabe, she had found a companion who understood the courage it took to stand between two worlds. One evening, as they sat together, watching the sunset paint the valley in fiery hues, Tabe spoke the truth they both had come to understand. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the greatest journeys begin with a single act of conscience." Sarah nodded, thinking of that fateful day when she had chosen to ride toward gunfire rather than away from it. "And sometimes," she replied, taking his hand, "those journeys lead exactly where we're meant to be."